The smell of coffee and antiseptic ointment is the smell of my mornings now. It's not a bad smell. It's just the truth of things. I'm stirring the oatmeal when I hear the soft thump of his cane against the floorboards down the hall, a sound as familiar to me now as my own heartbeat. That's Leo, my brother. He shuffles into the kitchen, moving with that careful, deliberate slowness that comes from a body that's been broken and put back together by army surgeons. His left leg drags a little, and his right arm hangs at an awkward angle, but he's here. He's alive. And he gives me a grin that could still light up a room, even with the shadows living in his eyes. "Smells good, Mike," he says, his voice a little gravelly from sleep. "Oatmeal, your favorite," I say, and he barks a laugh because it's absolutely not. But it's what the doctor says is good for him, so we eat it. We do a lot of things that are good for him now. I slide the bowl across the counter to him and watch as he maneuvers into his chair. It's a practice dance we have, one we don't even think about anymore. I don't rush to help him. He doesn't want me to. That was the first thing I learned when he came home from the last tour. He didn't want pity. He just wanted his life back. Since he can't have that, he'll settle for his dignity. My job is to make sure he keeps it. People on the outside, they see the caregiving. They see the pills I portion out, the physical therapy appointments I drive him to, the way I have to steady him sometimes on the stairs. They see a burden. They see what I've given up. They didn't know the boy he was. Leo, who was bigger and tougher than any kid on our block. Leo, who stood between me and Billy Cooper's fists in the 4th grade, taking a black eye himself so I could run. Leo, who taught me how to throw a spiral, how to change a tire, how to talk to a girl without stammering. He was my first hero, long before he ever put on a uniform. He sacrificed for a concept bigger than himself, for a flag, for a country, for the idea of keeping people like me safe. And then he came home, quieter, older, a ghost of that vibrant boy living behind his eyes. Caring for him isn't a chore. It's an honor. It's the smallest possible repayment on a debt I can never truly settle. It's me returning the favor for all those times he stood as a shield between me and the world. Now the world is a different kind of hard, and his body is the battlefield. So I'll stand there for him. It's that simple. He looks up from his oatmeal, catching me watching him. "What?" "Nothing, Leo," I say, pouring the coffee. "Just glad you're here." And I mean it. Every single morning. The first year Sarah tried. I'll always give her that. When Leo first moved in, there was a sense of shared purpose. She'd help me set up the downstairs bedroom, fluffing the pillows just so. She'd make his favorite meatloaf, the one with the brown sugar glaze, and smile when he'd compliment it. There was a grace period, a time when his presence was a noble cause, a story she could tell her friends over brunch. "My brother-in-law, the veteran," she'd say, and there would be a sympathetic, respectful pause. But causes become routines. Stories become daily life. And daily life with a disabled veteran is not a brunch story. It's the smell of ointment that lingers, no matter how many candles you light. It's the canceled plans because the pain is too bad that day. It's the quiet, heavy dinners where Leo retreats into his memories, and I retreat with him, leaving Sarah on the outside. The complaint started small, wrapped in the gentle paper of concern. "Don't you think we should get a nurse for that? You're not a professional, Mike." Or, "I just worry you're exhausting yourself." The subtext was clear. This is too much. He is too much. The gentle concern hardened into pointed comments. "We haven't been out to a movie in months." The guest room is permanently his room now. My parents can never visit. Our entire lives revolve around his schedule. The word "our" began to sound a lot like "my." Then came the fights. They always started after Leo was asleep and hissed whispers in our bedroom so he wouldn't hear. "You spent 2 hours with him tonight going through old photo albums. You barely said 2 words to me." "He was having a good day, Sarah. He was talking about before. That's rare." "What about us? When do we get a good day?" "He's my brother. And I'm your wife, or did you forget that? It feels like you're choosing him over me every single day." That was her new refrain. "You're choosing him over me." I tried to explain. God, did I try? "It's not a choice, Sarah. It's a responsibility. He didn't choose to get hit by an IED. He sacrificed for all of us. You, me, everyone. This is what family does. but my words just bounced off a wall of her resentment. She couldn't see the heroism, only the inconvenience. She couldn't see the brother I owed my life to, only the third wheel in our marriage. The house, once a home, became a tense partitioned space. The living room was mine and Leo's territory, filled with the quiet understanding of shared history. The kitchen and bedroom were Sarah's, where she stewed in a silence that felt louder than any argument. We were two islands in the same small sea, and the water between us was getting colder and deeper by the day. I was losing her. And with every demand she made, she was making it clear that for her to stay, Leo had to go. The dinner was a quiet, strained affair. The only sounds were the clink of cutlery and the low hum of the refrigerator. Leo, sensing the tension as he always did, had eaten quickly and excused himself, retreating to the sanctuary of his room with a book. I was clearing the plates, my back to Sarah, hoping the mundane act would dissolve the thick silence. It didn't. "We need to talk, Mike." Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth or even its recent anger. It was the tone of someone who had already made up their mind. I turned, leaning against the sink, my hands still wet. "Okay, talk." She was sitting perfectly straight at the table, her hands folded in front of her like she was in a business meeting. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "This isn't working. I can't do it anymore." "We've had a rough patch, Sarah. We can get through it. We can look into more help, a part-time nurse." I was already reaching for solutions, trying to fix it the way I always did. "It's not about a nurse." The flatness cracked, and a sliver of her frustration bled through. She took a breath, composing herself. "It's about this." She gestured around the kitchen, at the house, at everything. "Our life. It's gone. It's been replaced by this endless caretaking. There's no room for us. There's no room for me." "He's my brother," I said, the words feeling worn and useless. "What do you want me to do? Put him in some home? Abandon him?" "I want you to act like a husband," she shot back, her eyes finally flashing up to mine. "I want a life with the man I married, not a live-in medic for a man who isn't even your responsibility." The air went out of the room. "Not my responsibility?" My voice was low, dangerous. "He took a bullet and a piece of shrapnel for his country. That makes him everyone's responsibility. But he's my blood, my brother. That makes him my responsibility, first and foremost. Family isn't optional, Sarah. It's not a subscription you cancel when it gets too hard." She stared at me, and I saw it then. The finality, the end of the road. All the arguments, the tears, the whispered resentments, they had all been leading here. She had reached her line in the sand. She stood up, her chair scraping harshly against the tile floor. The words, when they came, were delivered not with heat, but with a chilling, absolute calm. They fell into the silence between us like stones. "Then I guess this is it, Mike. I can't live like this. I won't." She took a sharp breath. "It's him or me. You can't have both." The world narrowed to the space between her lips and my ears. The hum of the fridge faded away. The weight of those 6 words settled on my shoulders, heavier than any load I'd ever carried. It's him or me. This wasn't about less attention or a lack of date nights. This was an ultimatum, a demand to sever the most fundamental bond of my life. She was asking me to choose between a loyalty sworn in childhood and a loyalty sworn in love. She was asking me to betray my brother, to turn my back on the very concept of duty and family that defined me, all to prove my love for her. In that stretched-out silence, I looked at her. I saw the woman I'd loved, the one I'd promised a life to. But I also saw a stranger who could look at a broken man who had given everything and see only an obstacle to her happiness, a stranger who believed love was a finite resource, and that my love for Leo somehow stole from what was rightfully hers. The choice in that moment wasn't a choice at all. It was a revelation. The cracks in our marriage hadn't been caused by Leo's presence. They were caused by the fundamental difference in the bedrock of who we were. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just looked at her, and the last flicker of hope for us died in my chest. "Okay," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I understand." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there. I walked past Leo's closed door, down the hall, and into our bedroom. I didn't start packing yet. I just sat on the edge of the bed, in the dark, and listened to the crushing silence of a decision that had already been made. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time, just listening to the old house settle around me. Down the hall, I could hear the faint rhythmic sound of Leo's breathing, a sound I'd learned to listen for in the early days after he came home, when the nightmares were bad. It was steady tonight, peaceful. It's him or me. The words echoed in the silence, a cold, brutal edict. They didn't feel like a question anymore. They felt like a test of my entire character. And she had failed it, not me. My mind drifted back, not to the good times with Sarah, but further, to a dusty backyard and a younger Leo, all scraped knees and fierce loyalty. He'd taken a beating from 3 older kids for stealing my favorite baseball cap back from a bully. He never once complained about his black eye, just tossed me the cap and said, "Nobody messes with my brother." Then it flashed to a different image, a scanned, pixelated letter on my computer screen, one of the few he'd been able to send from that hellhole overseas. Most of it was blacked out by sensors, but the last lines were burned into my memory. "It's getting pretty loud over here, Mikey. Don't worry about me. Just, if anything happens, you take care of Mom for me, okay? Promise me. Family looks out for each other." He'd been thinking of family, of his responsibility to us, while sitting in a dust storm of violence and fear. He'd signed his name, and a week later, the IED had torn through his convoy. Take care of Mom. He'd never had to ask me to take care of him. It was the same promise. It was the only promise that ever truly mattered. I thought of Sarah's words, not just from tonight, but from all the arguments. He's a burden. You're not his keeper. We deserve a normal life. They were the words of someone who saw life as a transaction, where sacrifice was a deficit and love had conditions. She saw my brother's needs as an imposition, his presence as an invasion of the life she felt entitled to. I loved her, or I had loved the woman I thought she was. But the woman who could issue that ultimatum was someone I didn't know. She was asking me to break a vow I'd made long before I'd ever said, "I do." A vow made in childhood sandboxes and reinforced in the stark reality of a veteran's hospital. A vow of loyalty. The first faint light of dawn began to bleed through the window, painting gray stripes across the carpet. The decision, which had seemed so monumental hours before, now felt like the most simple, obvious thing in the world. There was no choice. There was only one path forward for a man who wanted to be able to look at himself in the mirror. I stood up. My body felt heavy, but my mind was clear, cleansed of the months of doubt and negotiation. I walked to the closet and took down her largest suitcase, the one we'd used for our honeymoon. It felt like a lifetime ago. I moved methodically, without anger. I folded her clothes, the sweaters she loved, the dresses she wore to parties we no longer hosted. I gathered her jewelry from the box on her dresser, her toiletries from the bathroom. Each item was a piece of a life we were supposed to have built together. Now it was just stuff. It held no power over me. I was zipping the suitcase closed when I heard the bedroom door open. Sarah stood there, wrapped in her robe, her face pale with sleep and confusion. Her eyes went from me to the suitcase on the bed to the smaller bag beside it, filled with her shoes. What are you doing?" she asked, her voice husky with sleep. I straightened up and looked at her, really looked at her for the last time. There was no rage in me, no desire to hurt her. There was only a profound, unshakable certainty. "You asked me to choose," I said, my voice quiet but firm in the morning stillness. It didn't sound like my voice. It sounded like the voice of the man I was supposed to be. I did. For a moment, she just stared, her brain refusing to process the scene, the suitcase, her things neatly packed, my calm, resolved posture. The confusion on her face curdled into disbelief, then ignited into raw, white-hot anger. "What is this?" she hissed, the words sharp and venomous. She took a step into the room, her robe tightening around her. Are you throwing me out?" "I'm accepting your terms," I said, my voice still low. I didn't want Leo to hear. "You said it was him or you. I'm choosing him." The calmness in my voice seemed to enrage her more than any shout could have. It stripped away her power, her expected script of a dramatic fight. Her composure shattered. "You heartless bastard." The curse ripped through the quiet morning. After everything I've given you, after putting up with this situation for so long, this is how you thank me? By choosing him? She was crying now, angry, frustrated tears that tracked through her morning makeup. He's a cripple, Mike, a broken down soldier who doesn't even know what year it is half the time. And you're throwing away your wife for that? The ugliness of the words hung in the air. They didn't hurt me, they just confirmed everything. She had never seen him. She had only ever seen his injuries, his needs, his presence as an obstacle. He's my brother, I said, the 3 words a final, unassailable wall. She swore again, a string of curses that seemed too small and petty for the gravity of the moment. She snatched the smaller bag, the one with her shoes, and hurled it toward the door. Then she grabbed the handle of the large suitcase and wrestled it off the bed, its weight awkward and uncooperative. You'll regret this, she spat, dragging the case behind her as she stormed out of the bedroom. You'll be lonely and miserable in this pathetic museum of yours, and you'll realize what you threw away. Don't you dare call me. I didn't follow her. I listened to the sound of her furious struggle with the suitcase down the hall, the slam of the front door that shook the whole house. Then, silence. A deep, resonant silence that felt like the first clean breath after being trapped in a smoke-filled room. I stood there for a long minute, just breathing it in. The weight was gone. The endless tension, the walking on eggshells, the pressure to somehow split myself in two, it had evaporated with the slam of that door. A soft knock came at my doorframe. Leo stood there leaning heavily on his cane, his face etched with concern. He'd heard it all. Mike? He asked, his voice quiet. Everything okay? I looked at my brother. I saw the man who had fought for a concept of home and had almost lost his chance to ever have one. I saw my responsibility. I saw my family. I walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. Yeah, Leo, I said, and I meant it more than I had in years. A genuine, unforced smile touched my lips. Better than ever, because I know where I stand. The house was quieter, but the silence was different. It wasn't the tense, heavy quiet of withheld words and resentment. It was a peaceful, easy quiet. The air itself felt lighter, easier to breathe. Leo and I fell into a new rhythm, one without the constant undercurrent of appeasement. We ate when we were hungry. We left the TV on the History Channel all afternoon if we felt like it. We sat on the back porch in the evenings, not saying much, just watching the light fade. It wasn't exciting, but it was real. It was ours. He started physical therapy with a new vigor, as if he sensed the unshackling of the atmosphere. I'd find him doing his exercises without being prompted, a faint grimace of determination on his face. Gotta pull my weight around here, he'd grunt, and I'd just clap him on his good shoulder and let him be. Friends and neighbors took sides, of course. Some of her friends called me a cold monster. Some of mine, the ones who understood duty, just nodded slowly and said, had to be done. Her mother left a blistering message on my machine. My own mother, after a long pause, simply said, You did the right thing, Michael. Family is family. But the strangest thing was, I didn't spend any time weighing their opinions. There was no regret. There was only the simple, daily act of moving forward, of building a life that was smaller, simpler, and infinitely more honest. We were two brothers, battered by life in different ways, leaning on each other to stand straight. And for the first time since he'd come home, it felt like we were both finally healing. Love is hard. It asks you to be better, to compromise, to build something with another person. I believed in that once. But I've learned that love shouldn't ask you to dismantle yourself. It shouldn't demand you abandon your duty or betray your blood. Family is different. It's not something you build, it's something you are. It's a fundamental truth written into your bones. It's the promise you keep not because you want to, but because there is no other version of you that could exist without keeping it. She saw a burden, a problem to be managed, an obstacle to her happiness. She saw a broken man who cramped her style and stole my attention. I saw my brother, the boy who fought my battles, the man who fought for his country, the person who, despite his own pain, still asks if I'm okay. That's the difference between us. That's the chasm that love could never bridge. And that's why she's gone.